what do you think's at stake here? I mean, are things like targeted sanctions a realistic prospect?
I would say yes. I mean, we saw today Mexico and Canada are at their 25%. You saw the reception that Mr. Zelensky got in the Oval Office. I think if your assumption is, of some of your leadership, that it is already a lost cause, you've already lost here, you'll look at your fallback positions, Namibia and Angola. Then your view further is that to make it a winnable cause, it can't grow at 1% forever. You're going to lose here eventually. In that case, I think that it's perfectly plausible to think that there will be a ratcheting up of measures. Targeted sanctions on individuals and institutions, travel restrictions, asset freezes, all the way out perhaps to something as serious as sanctions or restrictions on foreign financial institutions holding South African government debt. You know, South Africans borrow very little in dollars because they've been wise since the Mandela days to the very real risk that holds, that you will eventually surrender your sovereignty to some bureaucrat in Washington.
That dollar component has been going up.
It has been going up, but it's been going up modestly.
Yeah.
But the idea, well, if it goes up modestly, we're safe because the domestic borrowing can't be. No, you're wrong. The domestic borrowing can also be compromised. Ability. So, I think it would be perfectly correct, plausible to think that if the South Africans do not find a way to deal with these core three issues with the US, then such measures might very well follow.
You talk to a number of companies in your consulting work, Frans. Are people doing some hard thinking around some of these potential possibilities? I mean, if we go into a world of, and it almost seems hard to believe at this stage, but if we go into a world of targeted sanctions against certain individuals or groups of institutions, individuals in this country, I mean, that has interesting and important ripple implications for corporate associations, for dealings, for board member structures, all these kinds of things. Are there some conversations happening around this?
Anyone who's tried to navigate the consequences of the sanctions applied to Russia after the start of the conflict in the Ukraine would have had a taste of just how far these tentacles can extend and just how serious the implications can be for the individuals involved.
Yeah, so there's that side of it. My other point here is I have a bit of skepticism on the efficacy of these sorts of moves. That's just something to explore as well. My perception is that when you get things like targeted sanctions, justified or unjustified, on a Mugabe regime or on a Chavez regime or so on, you often get a doubling down. They turn inward, leaders turn inward and treat the domestic economy as their fiefdom because they've lost access, because these things are happening. And I just think there needs to be real caution for kind of just calling for things like targeted sanctions in an environment where that could cause unintended harmful consequences. I mean, do you have thoughts on that?
I don't know if in the longer term that fully applies. I think that if you concede that the basis of all political action, diplomatic action, is the ability to secure deterrence by forcing consequences, and you then begin to second guess yourself, then you're losing. And in the case of South Africa, the country is already some way down the road of fiefdoms, exploiting political opportunities in order to enrich themselves. The construction mafia is to foretell what could happen across much of the country's economy. And, you know, we can talk about it here, but my read of it is, you know, reality is the thing that's still there even when you've stopped believing in it. And the Trump administration is real. Its post-liberal approach to the world is real. Its willingness to force deterrence is demonstrated over and over again. So I don't think there's much of a discussion to be had about the nuances one way or another, because the philosophy that underpins it has made a firm break with that end of history. to say it's hard power based on deterrence. If you do not comply, you will face the consequences. And I suspect that at odds with many other observers of this sort of thing, that in the fullness of time, this may bring about a safer and more stable and more prosperous world. But there may, of course, be exceptions where things go somewhat awry. But I would guess that in many of those cases, things were already going very much awry, and this was simply a final impetus as opposed to a set of actions, the sanctions, that took a society that was moving in the right direction, reoriented it, and after that it moved in the wrong direction, began to fall apart. It simply accelerates perhaps policies and ideas that were already well established.
I'm Russell Lamberti, Executive Director at Sakeliga. This conversation came to you from the lovely Northwoods House, which is the headquarters of the Free Market Foundation, an organisation doing excellent work, and I encourage you to get behind them and support their efforts. I also encourage you to get behind Sakeliga. We are taking on some major court cases against harmful state policy at the moment, and your support really matters. Thank you.